This is the brand new Nike Mercurial Vapor 16 in the launch special edition Bowerman prototype colorway, which is sold out, so you can't get it. The next colorway that released, right here, this beautiful shadow pack with what looks to be green accents. Now, by the time I put this out, there might be another inline colorway, and to give you some kind of reference as to when I'm recording this, England just got beat in the Euros final. Yeah, that's the thing that happened. Again. Hola, mi amigos, viva España! I don't have a Spain shirt, it's the closest I've got. Anyway, let's have a look at the boot, shall we? The primary use of today is to just simply compare the FG stud pattern, which you can see right here, which is it's glorious. I still cannot get over how amazing this looks. And the AG stud pattern, which is right here, which is slightly less glorious looking, but not because it's AG, just because this particular shadow pack doesn't have that wonderful orange highlight and the iridescent finish. But that's all right. Is it any good? Well, in short, I'm quite impressed. Let's have a look. So the FG is, of course, these chevron bladed studs, super aggressive all the way through the forefoot with these bladed studs in the back, a slightly more aggressive variation of what we got on the previous generation. The snapback is okay. I'm not blown away by it, but it's not bad, and there's a decent amount of stiffness and stability through the midfoot and the heel. Overall, it works pretty damn well. I'm not really complaining. If you do want a crazy speed boot, snapback, stiff feeling, you're not really going to get it, but it's good. It's good. And of course, what you do get is this full air zoom unit that runs in the front 2/3 of the boot. It's one of the key unique selling points of this particular boot. And usually when you get an AG boot, that kind of gets stripped away, especially with, for example, Adidas would be a good example. They tend to have a very generic sole plate that goes across all their boots, and you lose some of that tech. For example, when they did Carbotex, you lost the Carbotex in the AG plate. However, Nike to the rescue. You still get your air zoom unit in that front 2/3 of the boot, and it is identical to what you're going to get from the other variation, from the FG variation, which I think is fantastic. You're not losing that piece of key tech. Now, it's obviously important that that happens because they made such a big deal out of it. It's even still got the air branding around the heel. You have to keep the air zoom unit, and it is there. It's identical. But what else are the differences? Well, clearly the studs. The rear studs are similar in that these two studs here are exactly the same. They run in the same place, no bother at all. And then the back two studs have been switched to these conical studs on the, going the wrong way, on the AG plate, which you would expect. Conical studs that are slightly hollowed out. Perfect for an AG pitch, not the aggressive blades. Looking at the rest of it, again, you've just swapped out the super aggressive blades. You've kept this section here so that you can still engage that air zoom unit. That's the idea, is that all of these ridges, these forefoot ridges, engage the air zoom unit more, so it's more effective. So you still get those, but you've got conical studs, hollowed out conical studs all the way through the rest of the forefoot, and it just makes sense. So is this any good for AG? Of course it is. It's pretty much bang on. The studs aren't too long. If we do a quick comparison there, there's not a huge difference, but the shape is what's important here. So the studs aren't too long. They're going to be great for AG pitches. You've got the hollowed out studs, and they are all conical, which is much better for your AG pitch. Overall, fantastic. And I think this is perfectly adequate, especially if you've got a nice AG pitch, like a 3G, 4G, like one of those really nice AG pitches. These are going to be outstanding. And on top of that, I think that this is going to be good for a decent grass field as well. You don't want to be using this on wet or muddy turf or muddy grass, sorry, but if you've got a decent decent FG pitch. My brain's fried. This is England's fault. I'm blaming England. If you've got a decent firm ground pitch, I think you're going to be able to use these on both And there's a solid argument to be made that this is a better FG-AG option than this, simply because this is going to be too aggressive and it's dangerous. Now, let's talk about that stiffness and stability. Is it any good? And it's very, very similar. I would argue the same in terms of the rigidity through the midfoot, which again, we really, really like. The forefoot is pretty much the same. I think it is slightly different. It's very, very similar, but there seems to be a natural bend point a little bit further up in this area here for the FG boot, and that just makes it feel that little bit more snappy. Whereas on the AG boot, the natural bend point is one stud further back. The natural bend point is down here. You can see it there. And it just makes it feel a little bit less springy, but I don't think the difference is huge. I prefer that, but overall, it's not going to make a huge difference. But interesting to note, there's your natural bend point on that. And there's your natural bend point on that. Now, the only reason I can see for that is if you actually look at these forefoot fins, they are slightly different between the two boots. So on the FG boot, there's a much more pronounced one here. They all seem to be that little bit wider. And overall, hold on, is there actually less of them? Just doing a bit of maths while we're here. No, there's the same number, but these ones are definitely a little bit taller. These ones run a little bit wider. This one is definitely shorter and it probably comes up just as high, but it's not as long. Essentially, these are not going to get as much impact into the ground and engage that forefoot area, that air zoom pod, as much as you're going to get from here. And overall, what that might have done is made that impact, made that change so that they feel different, that they bend in a slightly different place. Now, this is not going to make a massive difference to your feelings on the boot, but if the air zoom and the bend point is super critical to you, it's just something that you probably want to know. Weight difference, because I will get asked 100 million times if I don't put the weight in the video. You've got 181 grams in the AG Superfly. Bear in mind, this is a Superfly with the dynamic fit collar, which adds around 5 grams. Then we have the FG plate, and that's going to come in at 177 grams. So realistically, the Superfly, if you were to get the Vapor in both the AG and the FG, they're going to be very, very similar weights to the point where you are not going to feel the difference, which again, quite impressive. Very frequently, the AG plate can be a little bit heavier just to add a little bit more durability. Speaking of the durability, I don't think Nike have added any reinforcement around the toe, which you do get quite a lot with AG boots. Doesn't seem to be anything there, and it does feel very much the same on feet as these do. It hasn't changed the shape a huge amount, which again does happen fairly frequently. If you add a brand new tooling, it adjusts the shape of the boot. I don't feel any difference, I'll be honest with you, between these through the midfoot and the forefoot. You could make an argument that it might feel a little different in the heel, but it's not noticeable at all. I'm not going to say by one over the other for different foot types. The shape, the fit, the feel, all exactly the same. And while we will cover this in a full review, again, I know a lot of you will ask, the sizing is to go with your regular Nike size, whatever you would normally buy in Nike boots. And for the width, they are pretty damn good for a wider foot. Look at the amount of material that is available there. And of course, the Superfly is always going to be not quite as good for a wider foot because you have to get your foot through a tiny little sock opening. Go for the Vapor. But either way, wider feet, yes. Very wide feet, no. Narrow, regular feet, yes. Go for it. That's it. All done. Catch you in the next one.